The Law Be With You podcast show, also known as Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube, is now part of the Red 5 network. Red 5 is a network of podcast shows aimed at bringing great quality content, especially Star Wars. And so look forward to some awesome collaborations on the Red 5 network with the Law Be With You podcast show.
There's one. Set for stun.
Welcome to the Law Be With You podcast show. I'm your host, Azzy. An interesting one in the world of fandom. There's some talk coming apparently from George Lucas's ex-wife about Kathleen Kennedy. Now, this is a really weird one. Marcia Lucas. Now, I think Marcia is also, obviously her and George were married for a bit, ended up getting divorced. Marcia went on and married somebody else. And I think George has recently got married again as well. But I'm going to read here from a little bit of a story that I've found here on the internet, on social media world. So let's have a look, and I'll read this as quoted. So this is a quote. Now, whether this is fully legitimate or not, we'll I'm sure more information will come out. But this is quite interesting. So let's have a look at this. I like Kathleen Kennedy. I always liked her, says Marcia Lucas. She was full of beans. She was really smart, really bright, really wonderful woman. And I liked her husband, Frank. I like them a lot. Now she's running Lucasfilm and making movies. It seems to me that Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams don't have a clue about Star Wars. They don't get it. And J.J. Abrams is writing these stories. When I saw that movie, when they killed Han Solo, I was furious. I was furious when they killed Han Solo. Absolutely, positively, there was no rhyme or reason to it. I thought, you don't get the Jedi story. You don't get the magic of Star Wars. You're getting rid of Han Solo. And then at the end of this last one, The Last Jedi, they have Luke disintegrate. They killed Han Solo. They killed Luke Skywalker. And they don't have Princess Leia anymore. And they're spitting out movies every year. And they think it's important to appeal to a woman's audience, so that their main character is this female who's supposed to have Jedi powers, but we don't know where she got her Jedi powers or who she is. It sucks. The storylines are terrible, just awful. So Marcia Lucas is not a fan of Kathleen Kennedy. These are strong words, very emotive. And obviously, she would have been in the inner circle, in the entourage. She would have known Kathleen Kennedy from the times when Kathleen Kennedy was working with George Lucas on the certainly on the prequels, and I think even probably going back as far as as some of the old films. So I don't know how far back they go, but certainly they'd have been working on the prequels together. So, and I think, if I'm remembering correctly, George Lucas knew Kathleen Kennedy from Kathleen working with Steven Spielberg at Amblin Studios Entertainment as well. So she's been around sort of Steven Spielberg and George Lucas for a long time, and obviously Spielberg and Lucas are very close friends as well. So Marcy's not a fan of Kathleen Kennedy. I'm not surprised, although I'm surprised that she said it in such an emotive way. If this quote is correct, then I'm surprised she said it in such an emotive way. But it's really interesting. I agree with a lot of what she said. If this is her quote, obviously they do try and explain it away, sort of post hoc in the Rise of Skywalker movie, that Rey's powerful because she's a Palpatine, which is a sort of post hoc, ad hoc sort of retcon of the story. It just ended up being a huge MacGuffin. It didn't work. It wasn't seeded in the story. If you wanted to bring her in as a Palpatine or as even related to Obi-Wan or somebody who's a main character who's strong in the Force, it should have been seeded in The Force Awakens. It should have been seeded in in The Last Jedi, so that by the time you get to the Rise of Skywalker, it's a storyline that has in-world logic. It makes sense, and so when you're enjoying this film, you're like, okay, we understand where they were going with Rey, her character arc. It makes sense. There is logic there. It fits with the lore and the canon. And I'm not saying that you can't ever do anything different. I'm not saying that you have to be locked in to, the same formulaic approach every single time, but you have to respect the canon in the sense that knowing that Star Wars is a monomyth film. It's about the hero's journey archetype. That's why it's so popular. That's why the franchise, including the Clone Wars animated shows, does so well and is so beloved, because it's because it's tapped into that monomyth narrative, and we all recognize it. We all know it. Marcia's gone into detail talking about that, about Han Solo being killed off and then Luke Skywalker. I mean, I've made a joke in a previous episode about Luke Skywalker that he got raptured to Star Wars purgatory sort of thing, because, he's had this situation where he's literally used a new force power, and it's pretty much astral projection. So he's basically, a thing that New Age practitioners will talk about is astral projecting, and that's literally what they've done, is a form of astral projection. It was a very unsatisfying way of kind of getting rid of Luke. It was weird. The Han Solo thing, I know Han Solo's actually mentioned that he wanted his character, Han Solo, Harrison Ford mentioned that he wanted his character to actually be killed off in Star Wars. I think even in The Return of the Jedi, he was pushing for Han Solo to be killed off. So actually, that could have been more Han Solo, Harrison Ford pushing for that, as much as Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams. So I have to be fair on that one. I don't think that was only Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams. And obviously that was used as a plot device to make, to juxtapose, to show how bad and how dark the path was going to go for Kylo Ren. So in that respect, it was a pivotal moment in the film. It showed that he was struggling with the light and the dark side of the Force. The light was calling him back, and in getting rid of Han Solo, he was then going towards committing to the dark side of the Force. In a narrative context, that actually made sense. I actually didn't have an issue with that at all. But the whole Rey thing of not knowing who her parentage is, and then sort of ad hoc, post hoc, retcon MacGuffin style. She's a Palpatine. That was awful. Honestly, guys, it's not good storytelling. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not good writing. It's not good storytelling. It didn't work. And that's why that movie, out of the 3 movies of the sequel trilogy, the latest sequel trilogy, in terms of money and a monetary value, that film did the worst out of all of them. And it's no surprise that it had the worst storyline out of all of them. And it was reflected in people, fans, not going back to watch that film 2 or 3 or 4 times, because the film just wasn't good enough. And once we knew that she was going to be a Palpatine, we were like, no, that doesn't work for us. That doesn't work for me. They haven't seeded it in the film. It's a MacGuffin. It's a MacGuffin, and we all know it, and it doesn't work. Anyway, I think I agree with most of what Marcia said. If she's actually said this, and it could be the fact that she has said this, I think I would agree with most of what she said there, certainly about Rey. In terms of Kathleen Kennedy, does she get Star Wars? I don't. It's an interesting one, because if you look at the Mandalorian TV show and some of the TV shows that are coming out, you might say some of the things that that her name is attached to with Star Wars as a project. Some of these projects are quite good and quite positive. Mandalorian is positive. Rogue One as a film was a really good film, and she was part of that with Gareth Edwards, and she was part of that. So you can't completely say that she doesn't get anything to do with Star Wars. But if I'm going with the sequel trilogy films, then I would say, yeah, she doesn't get Star Wars. She doesn't get Monomyth films. She doesn't get the magic, the lore, the things that Star Wars fans were looking for in those films. She didn't get it. So, yeah. What do you think at home, or wherever you listen to this podcast, or if you're listening on YouTube on Christian Fandom Geek? What do you think? Do you think that Kathleen Kennedy gets Star Wars, or do you think that some of the groups that don't like her are too harsh or are biased against her because she's a woman? What do you think? Obviously, she is a smart woman, and she's been breaking ground in Hollywood as a president of Disney Lucasfilm. So not of Disney itself, but of Lucasfilm. So, what do you guys think? Leave a comment on Christian Fandom Geek, and we'll be with you very soon again on the Lore Be With You podcast show.